Chapter 27. The Summer of Reflection. The emergency meeting. Melendel had seen Kronos and Azmetar making trouble. Alexander and Kashmir met with Melendel to figure out what to do with the Kronos. Once they arrived, the three headed over to the Odinian temple. Gregory had been expecting the three again, and found Dedan, Irvena, and Bilius already there. Gregory explained that he knew why Melendel had arrived. Gregory told the Jinns what he knew about the Kronos. According to Gregory, the Kronos was once a Jinn of the fifth order of Anagrammatrons. The Kronos specialized in the nature of action, but lacked an understanding of being itself. Now the Kronos had not taken too well to this, and considered that doing precedes being, and as a result took on the position that destruction, irreversibility, and flux were the nature of existence. After he assumed the position, he turned into a green hand capable of bringing immediate destruction upon the one to wear the hand, and the destruction on anything that touched the hand. When the Kronos is active, the earth is removed from the wholeness and truth that for the time gives. Gregory then explained some suspicions that the Kronos had recently been active in the realm of Kebsuda, and wielded by a figure known as by the Great Brother, who caused this curse to age a region quite rapidly. Gregory then explains that he believes the Great Brother to be Brutus. Gregory then explains the story of Esmetar. Esmetar the Progressive was one who could embrace new challenges, and did a great job at succeeding in bringing an innovation when the old ways were not working. However, Esmetar started becoming obsessed with novelty, and only cared about what was popular of the day and what the expectations were in regards to one's chronological age. Over time, Esmetar lost any identity of her own, and became nothing but hot air like the superficiality of all the Pitinitas. Alexander suggested consulting for the time. Kashmir was not so convinced on the idea, and objected that for the time could not be bothered with such silly matters. Melendel explained that Alexander may be right, but that they would have to consult other Jinns about the proposition. Irvena agreed, as he knew that he could handle bilocations, but not capable of handling anything brought on by the Kronos. As for Esmetar, Melendel had not been as concerned, knowing full well that she does not have much power except under the Kronos. What Melendel had been concerned about was who was wearing the hand of the Kronos. Bilious advice was to keep some spirit of dissent on the earth, knowing full well that this kind of stifling security measures on earth would be on such a time. The kobolds return. The kobolds had a burdensome journey back to Londinium and leaving Lionellum. On the way back, they got a glimpse of the mountain they climbed when looking at the temple in its glory before the feast of the flood. Otherwise, the kobolds were pretty glum about this prospect of leaving Lionellum and being stuck in Atlantica for another term. Zadok explained that he would make sure that on their off time they would get to see the lands of Lionellum and get this task of finding the book done nice and quickly. Poor Zadok did not know what he was in for. The kobolds went on a dreary journey quite somberly back to Londinium. As soon as the kobolds entered Londinium, there was a man handing out a book called The New Rules of Londinium. This Londinium had been part of an order known as the Skinnerite Order. The Skinnerite Order is an independent law enforcement agency that uses forms of corporal punishment to keep the Londinians in submission to some figure known as Arno's wishes. When they arrived back in Londinium, the kobolds found that Londinium had been put under a terrible curse from this evil sorcerer known as Arnil. Arnil's agenda was to take power over Londinium and eventually conquer Spartustica and Atlantis. Arnil's agenda was to turn the region into a massive labor camp, intent on making the Mistivans into servants to these sorcerers. These sorcerers were a thuggish type who had access to sorcery and believed it gave them the entitlements to subject those who did not possess the power. The Skinnerite Order considers it their duty to be for the Londinians' own good. Most of the Skinnerites are composed of Londinians who had aligned themselves with strong people to save their skin, and had little sense of loyalty to anyone if someone stronger than them came about. According to the Skinnerite philosophy, resistance was futile and the only wise move was to cooperate with Arnil and his bands of sorcerers due to the power. They justified their use of violent discipline with the idea that they were preparing them for a world where Arnil and his sorcerers ruled, and thought it more efficient to train residents to keep their nose clean through force and not offend the sorcerers, and saw any rebellion as making the rebels guilty of any blood shed by the sorcerers. Milo's summer classes. The first part of summer had been very eventless for Milo. The students were done with school on Thursday afternoon. Now Milo knew that starting on Monday he would have to start in SAT preparation classes and algebra. Milo was not happy about this in the least, considering that he had only been out of school for a day and now had to sit through some boring SAT preparation classes for 3 weeks. Frankly, Milo was quite depressed to be out of school for the summer. Milo was also still quite fearful that he would not get to see much of Amira in the upcoming year. That first weekend off, the Biancatellos had the Fiorentinos over for pizza. That evening, Ray, Milo, Uncle Ottavio, Salvatore, and their neighbor Nate Schuper Smith went to an indoor football game. On Sunday, Milo saw Ashley out to dinner with her family. On Monday, Milo started the SAT preparation class and an algebra class, much to his displeasure. This was the same facility the previous summer that Milo had an art class with Lydia, Eustace, and Samantha. Luckily, the class was only 3 weeks. At this class, Milo had a temporary crush on a girl, Kylie, who was also stuck in these classes. When it came to the SATs, Milo feared that this was just another way to break people's will into becoming compliant duds to a thankless system. Milo noticed something stupid about an SAT preparation class, knowing full well that the test is a big joke if it required having to take a class with no educational value whatsoever just to pass it. Milo was also becoming quite resentful towards the whole principles that people use to justify this, seeing the whole premise as saying nothing more than might makes right. On Thursday, Milo went on another Cedar Point trip with his youth group. Due to all the seniors being gone from the previous year, Milo was stuck having to hang around with Lydia and her friends Bob and Rachel. During the whole day, Lydia was not too happy about this, as she wanted a day with the girls. Milo was not too happy about this either, as he would have preferred to have hung around with the people from the previous year. Milo and Lydia got into a minor spat after she told him that this was a privilege for him. She only did this when Milo wanted to pick something to do. That Saturday, after Milo stopped, when next day, Ray had his golf trip, and Milo told Margaret about how Lydia behaved. Margaret admitted that she was a bit disappointed in Lydia after being so unaccommodating towards Milo, but Margaret had explained that Lydia was probably disappointed about having a boy hang around with them on their girls' day. That Saturday, after Milo started these SAT and algebra classes, he bought the second and third seasons of The Simpsons. So far, Milo preferred the first season over the second season. Frankly, the second season seemed a bit morbid to Milo. Milo was still thinking about Amira and how just a few months ago he learned about their long-forgotten past. That weekend, Milo watched Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which he remembered seeing the previous summer and over Christmas break.
Once again we tell
That Sunday, there was a Father's Day get-together at Gran Patoni's. Ray was on his annual golf trip with some neighbors and was unable to attend. The O'Malleys came in, but Alicia decided to stay back inside a pond, since she supposedly had to study. When Salvatore told Milo this, he thought this was all a joke. Salvatore considered this to be the stupid excuses for not coming to a party. Milo, on the other hand, was a bit annoyed about this, and he did not like seeing a family get-together blown off for something like studying. Now, Milo is not one to have a high level of tolerance for externally imposed obligations or compromising ideals for pragmatic purposes. During the party, Aunt Marie got a call from Alicia about needing to find a digital camera and how her friends needed to take some pictures. Both Milo and Salvatore suspected that Alicia was not really studying, but was just using it as an excuse to have the house to herself, just for her and a new social group. When Milo was not in class, he spent his time working on music and found 3 haunting pieces known as Joseph Lieber, Jesus Lead the Way, and Remember the Man. Joseph Lieber is a German motet with the same melody as the hymn Christ Was Born on Christmas Day, which Milo learned 2 summers ago, right at the very beginning. Milo remembered how just 2 summers ago he had a camp doing fun activities and now was stuck taking pointless classes. Jesus Lead the Way was a Moravian hymn written by Nicholas von Zinzendorf, who was known for a devotion to the crucified Christ. Milo remembered how he bought the CD to remember the spring break at Battlekip. Frankly, the sports hall felt more appealing even than these SAT classes. Remember the Man is an English folk choral for the Christmas season, recounting the fall of man and redemption. Milo found the song Jesus Leads the Way on his CD Proust, Music for the Liturgy. Other than this, Milo was not having a lot of luck at finding new hymns and constantly downloading pieces similar to the ones from the past 3 years. Studying had not put Milo in the greatest of mood over these weeks, and hated having to look over dull and meaningless material. Ray explained to Milo that this was all about his future. Milo saw no future prospects that could be gained from sacrificing his summer just to have a future sitting in an office committed to pointless endeavors. The hooded figure in Stockholm. One day, while the Gins were waiting for news from Father Time, Alexander came across a highly disturbing sight. Alexander saw a hooded figure speaking with the archer known as Stockholm. This figure asked Stockholm who he was. Stockholm told the figure he met his kind long time ago when the brat could begin to talk. Stockholm explained that his colleague Galtron knew the brat would be his downfall and reminded him of the brat's foretold from the house of Dariaha. Stockholm tells the hooded figure that he found out who from the house of Dariaha the seer had mentioned 14 ages back. According to Stockholm's accounts, this Dariaha brat had butted into that territory, and the first brat had taken quite a fancy to her. Stockholm started on to lament that he had never been appreciated by those under his care, and they always called him a tyrant. Stockholm talks about how he does all these acts of kindness, all those under his care, and many appreciate how unworthy they are of his kindness, and how he is only placing restrictions on them for their own good. The hooded figure then mentions the ungrateful Gins fighting against Esmetar and the Kronos. The hooded figure then rants about how the Kronos is not really out there, and they just need someone to blame for the pitiable complaints that the Earth is a dangerous place where change is the only reality. Then they persecute Esmetar, who knows her place and understands the mortal's age and have no choice but to conform to chronological stereotypes and labels. Then they blame the Kronos because they just want to live in a world where their kind of order he is for is unnecessary, all because they don't like making sacrifices and want to do what they want when they want and complain about boring restrictions. This figure then talks about how he had an important position but was forced to work with some idiot from the Seventh Order, then given a discharge because they couldn't handle his offers. After Alexander heard this, he reported this to Melendel. Melendel quite clearly tells Alexander not to mess with an Archon, as they are very powerful. Alexander explains that the voice under the hooded figure had a familiar voice, and spoke of events he heard about in passing. Melendel then took Alexander and Kashmir to the Demusidian temple complex. Polyphanes and Pepalbus had been waiting for them, along with Mernotar, Oranos, Solam, Ahamkara, Skeeter, Volturian, Nema, Hidari, Baruch, Sophia, Apollonius, and Bacchus. They all held a new rite at the Amnonian and Dionysian temples in a battle against the Archon Stockholm. They all agreed that this was a particularly tough situation, as the Archon Galtron was a tyrant who had utter indifference towards those under his domination. Galtron was one who had no problem sacrificing another for his agenda to be accomplished. Stockholm, on the other hand, was one to be quite concerned about the doings-on of those under his dominion. According to Papalbus, Stockholm has his power to impose obligations on mortals and can put on a facade of selflessness, giving them this high moral improvement. Alexander said it would be better to be under Galtron than Stockholm. The third feast of the guest. Life in Londinium had become quite dreary and cheerless under Aniel's reign. The kobolds had felt utterly helpless against the powers of Arnihil and the Skinnerites. During this time, the kobolds kept the spirits up by constructing a community center based on their knowledge of Leonellum. The time had come for the feast of the unexpected guests up in the Piedmontis Gardens. This year the festival had been quite dreary. The kobolds had looked upon their view of Lionellum and the Atlantis Temple and remembered the great bridge that connected Lionellum to the garden and the 2 visits from the Great Phoenix. Otherwise, the Londinians who did attend had little good to say about the Skinnerites, most often referring to them as traitorous cowards. Then one Londinian requested that the kobolds assist them in fighting against Arnil and his minions of sorcerers, to which they agreed to. Frankly, the kobolds had no clue how to even fight a sorcerer, and did not see any possibility of victory, but felt it would be better to die fighting these sorcerers than give in to their lies and start going along with their propaganda. Milo's suspicions. The Biancatellos hosted the 4th of July that summer, like they normally had after getting the swimming pool. By this time, Milo was finally all done with his SAT preparations and algebra classes, much to his relief. Milo was lucky on the last day, as he had to leave early due to a dentist appointment. But he did get one last look at Kylie. On Saturday night, the Biancatellos went to church, as they had the party to prepare for the next day. In church, Milo saw Aunt Michelle's neighbors, but no Katie and an Asian girl sitting with them. What Milo had not known was that Katie was on an exchange program from Easter until the late summer. That's why they had gone to Washington, D.C. over Easter break. That party had been quite enjoyable, as the whole family attended. This party included all the Biancatellos, even the O'Malleys. Even Alicia showed up for the party. Aunt Adrienne also attended, along with Grandma Dora and Grandma Pearl. For food, Ray made barbecued ribs, and Margaret made blueberry, strawberry, and coconut cream pies. Yes, it's for the red, white, and blue, if anybody's wondering. That night, Matt spent the night. Matt tried to get out of staying over due to a stomachache, but Milo found some Tums and saved the evening. That night, Milo and Matt watched some third season episodes of The Simpsons. Milo liked this particular season of The Simpsons better than the second season. That Tuesday, Milo started thinking about his summer from 6 years ago. Milo started to wonder if the reason he was so miserable at the sports hall was because he missed Amira. Milo had remembered how just one day he forgot about Amira near the end of the school year and had been in a bit of a funk. Milo then thought that the reason that he wanted to go back to the Alpha Phi campus was in order to see Amira. That afternoon, Milo came across a Dan Schutt CD known as Here I Am, Lord, with the hymn with drums and dancing. This was all on the internet. Milo remembered the hymn being quite popular at St. Timothy's that summer 6 years ago. On Wednesday night, Milo had a dream about both Amira and Anahita, which took place at the Alpha Phi pool. A counselor asked who wanted to go swimming, and Amira and Anahita and Milo all chose to go. Then Ray picked Milo up before he could swim. That Friday, after the 4th of July, Milo and Sean went to Seaboarding for a couple of hours. This had not been an overly eventful day, as they only had time for a few rides. On the way home, Sean's parents, the Podmores, they took Milo and Sean out for pizza at Pizza Hut. The next day, the Biancatellos went to the Greek Fest at an Orthodox church next to North Creek Middle School, where Milo had his fall fest in 6th grade. During this time, Milo started rereading Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, as he never finished the book in the first place. What happened was Milo had been in the middle of reading the book when Mrs. Jafari called, and he never got the interest in finishing after what happened with Minyu. Plus, Milo feared getting to the part of the book where Sirius is killed. Also, Milo had watched Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban for a second time that summer. Milo had come across the movie score known as Window to the Past. Milo had quite a bit of nostalgia for the previous 3 summers, and how much more enjoyable they had seemed. Milo remembered the last summer when the Corras lived next door to the Biancatellos, and how he got to meet Amira in the backyard before they moved, and being at peace with the Jafaris. Milo also had flashbacks to the summer before going into 9th grade, and seeing Amira's yearbook picture at the summer camp, and how that summer he had not been tied down to silly obligations. Plus, Milo remembered going on Uncle Wayne's boat. Then Milo remembered the previous summer, which had been so much fun with boating with the Rumcorns, and knowing that he would soon see Amira once school started. This year, the Rumcorns had no plans on even coming up to Cider Pond due to Kyle working at Cedar Point, and Kevin having some of the same kind of preparation classes Milo did. Milo feared that this upcoming school year he would not see Amira, and his living would be over, and have to sacrifice living in order to survive. Milo wondered what the point of all this was, and could see no purpose in going along with such systems. Over that week, Aunt Marie called Ray about inviting Lydia to spend the week with them. Aunt Marie explained that Lydia would probably not see too much of Alicia, as she spent most of her time lifeguarding and going out with friends. Milo, on the other hand, had no interest in even returning to New Seneca, as he remembered how bored he was last year with Matt being such a boring host. Milo could not help but give Lydia advice out of some spite for his last trip. Milo started becoming suspicious of Alicia, and got this idea that she was trying to avoid Cider Pond out of fear of Steve. Milo remembered how 2 summers ago at Drake's Forest, he spoke to Alicia on Steve's behalf, and she got a little freak that he noticed her. Then Milo remembered how the O'Malleys left Cider Pond right after the wedding, as Matt was scheduled to serve Mass and didn't even bother to switch. Then Milo remembered how Alicia kept pestering him about Steve when he was visiting 2 summers ago and was quite moody. Milo then remembered how Alicia flipped out over him and Salvatore making a card from Steve and leaving Cider Pond early because she had to babysit. Then Milo remembered how Alicia freaked out when she thought that he saw the picture of Steve. Milo sold a picture of Alicia to Steve. The weekend after finishing the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was released. Milo became disappointed again after finding out that Professor Dumbledore would be killed off. That Sunday after church, the Biancatellos drove Lydia up to Cider Pond for the week to visit the O'Malleys. Milo came for the ride as they ate lunch at a little diner. Milo then told Lydia the truth about Veal. Lydia was not too happy with Milo over this, as she felt she could no longer eat the meat in good conscience. Milo only learned this from The Simpsons. When the Biancatellos got back to Cider Pond, Milo started instant messaging Steve and told him all the family drama with Alicia and Matt. Milo asked Steve about how good his family is from out of town, about staying inside the pond when they do, and how long he stays wherever he lives, how long he stays when he visits his cousins. Steve mentioned he stays a while, like a week or so, while they were in. Milo was also noticing that he sees the Runcorns even more than the O'Malleys, but had not seen them so far this summer, as Kevin was in ACT preparation too, and Kyle was working at Cedar Point. Much to their annoyance, no fun. On Wednesday, Ray took Milo, Salvatore, and Eustace to a baseball game. Milo saw a woman at the game who resembled Apu's wife, Manjula from The Simpsons. After the game, Sylvester came over to swim. Milo had this game where every time Sylvester did something annoying, he told Sylvester whatever he was doing was an offense. At night, Ray made a nice steak dinner that, accordingly to Sylvester, it was a bit too spicy for him. Mind you, it was pretty peppery for a small child. Now, Milo, Eustace, and Salvatore liked the steak. As to where Margaret was, we don't really know. She may have been working late or had a dinner. At night, Ray showed the boys his wedding video. That same day, Aunt Diane and Grandpa Tony were up visiting the O'Malleys. The next day, when at dinner at the Fiorentinos, Grandpa Tony mentioned having never seen Alicia. The Friday before picking Lydia up, Milo has a weird nightmare about flying, which greatly bothered him. This airport resembled the power plant in the episode of The Simpsons, The Blunder Years, where Homer finds a corpse. Then the dream changes to Milo going to a school pool, which had been contaminated and closed. Then they're off. As it was, the Biancatellos will be leaving for Mexico, and Milo was a bit anxious about flying. Milo had not really liked flying since he came back from Orlando when he was 5, and leaving Grandpa Clarence and Maple Carroll. Plus Milo remembered his last 2 flights 2 years ago to Tampa and how overwhelming they were. Plus the prospect of going to a foreign country was a bit overwhelming for Milo. On Saturday, the Biancatellos met with the O'Malleys halfway between Cider Pond and New Seneca. for lunch to pick Lydia up. Lydia cried the whole way home as she said the O'Malleys were so much fun. When they got to Cider Pond, a bank named after a street in New Seneca got Lydia all upset again. That night, Milo had a strange dream that Margaret got sick and had to be hospitalized. And Milo also had a dream about that facility he also had to take those ridiculous classes at. The Sunday after Lydia returned home, the Biancatellos went to a later mass, which the Jaffaris were also at. Milo was asked last minute to be an altar server, as another altar server did not show up. After Mass, Milo found out that Alicia did not want to join the family to go to Drake's Forest, claiming that she hated camping and the outdoors. But Milo soon found out her away message on AIM was that she was out camping with some friends. Milo told Salvatore about this. Now Salvatore was took Milo's theories about Steve a little more seriously than he expected. Now Milo was not going to tell anybody else about these theories to begin with. On Monday, the Biancatellos and Aunt Diane went up to the funeral home as Marilyn's father had passed away. For the Times victory. One afternoon, Melendel, Naima, and Randolph met at the gin lounge in a private room. Randolph asked what the charge had suspected of his cousin was true. Naima gave her stance, which had been that people often get into demanding social groups and forget what is important to them. Then Naima explained that finding the balance is an art, and people, when they start off, burden themselves with too many commitments with no leisure time, and think that somehow is what makes them important. Melendel explains that both are essentially right. Randolph starts going off about how his friend never did anything to his cousin to even merit such pointless phobias. Melendel explains that this is not some conspiracy or not, but at the hands of someone very untrustworthy. Melendel had an idea of who, but wondered how they were doing this. During the meeting, Melendel got a letter explaining that Father Time took up his offer and knew well that he was the only one who could expel the Kronos and fix this mess the Kronos created. There was a scheduled meeting time at the Demusidian Temple complex. Polyphanes and Purplebus had been at the temple along with Marinota, Oranos, Solam, Ahamkara, Skeeter, Voltirian, Neba, Hidari, Barosh, Sophia, Apollonius, and Bacchus. When Father Time arrived, the jinns prostrated before him as they always do. Then Father Time instructed Melendel to summon Huzisha, Alexander, and Kashmir. A few days later, Father Time arrived back at the temple, holding a deflated balloon that once held Esmetar. Father Time explained that the Kronos is gone and the curse had been undone. Then Father Time departed. The Jinn were in great amazement and wondered how the curse was undone. Any Jinn knows that the ways of the elements is deeply mysterious. Alexander then wanted to break the news to the earth about the Kronos defeat. Melendel declared that the news needed to wait until the new school year comes. Mexico and Cedar Point. The Friday night before leaving for Mexico, Milo had quite a rough night of sleep. Milo had been thinking about leaving so early in the morning, being so far out to the country, and flying. Milo probably got at least 4 hours of sleep, and had woken up multiple times. By the time the morning came, Milo was at least relieved to be up, and knew that it was just a matter of time in getting the flight over with. At 5 in the morning, the Biancatellos left the house while it was still dark. Milo was much calmer after departing from the house. Now on the way up, Milo started saying that he would never like to be dropped off by somebody, thinking that he would be thinking about them all day. After the flight, they arrived in Pittsburgh at the airport in the dawn, which felt more like lunchtime due to Milo's sleeping habits in all summer. By the afternoon, they arrived in Cancun and were taken off to their resort, the Mayan Riviera. The Biancatellos rode with a family who also arrived at the same time as the Biancatellos. Then they arrived at the resort. At first, Milo felt a little out of place in a new country and not knowing the language that well. For most of the vacation, the Biancatellos were either at the pool or the beach. On the first day, Milo spent some time reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. With being in Mexico, this reminded Milo of the O'Malleys, and Diane and Emma taking a trip out to this place over Easter break. This started getting Milo then thinking about Amira again. Milo started to like being immersed in a different culture, as much of a different culture as this could be for being on a resort. And the beaches reminded Milo of the Filantino's aquarium. The Biancatellos took 2 excursions. The first excursion they took was to a place known as Tulum, which is an ancient Mayan site. The bus tour picked some people up from the hotel the O'Malleys stayed at. Milo enjoyed the ruins, as he had wanted to see them for years, which you could trace back to the game Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. Lydia had not enjoyed herself so much, as Tulum was very hot and she was ready to kill Milo over this one. The second excursion was to a place known as Shalha, which was a natural water park. The Biancatellos also ate very well on this trip. Now when it came to Shalha, this had some places like swimming with dolphins, jumping off of into cliffs into the water, some watery caves, and of course this buffet that served a cactus salad. The Biancatellos, as they ate well on the trip, had reservations for an Italian restaurant, a Japanese restaurant, and a steakhouse. Most of the time they ate at the buffet, usually for breakfast. After about a week, the Biancatellos got bored with the same food from the buffet. While looking through one of the outdoor markets, Milo saw a chessboard similar to the one Ray and Margaret bought on their honeymoon several years back, before Milo was even born, or an idea. Now, coming back from Mexico had not been so bad. Milo felt a little weird, as he was no longer fearful of flying, and more into long trips. Plus, being immersed into a different culture kind of gave him some different perspectives, and took him out of his routine. On the first week back, Milo had talked with lots of his relatives about his trip to Mexico. In fact, this spirit of adventure was quite into Milo for that week. Milo showed Grandpa Tony some pictures of Tulum. Milo told Aunt Jane about how hot it was in Tulum, and how as soon as you got off the van, how all you felt was just utter heat. And otherwise, what else happened? Lily was in town visiting with Samantha for the week, and she stayed until Wednesday. A week after returning home from vacation, Margaret's friend Tessa from work was visiting with her son and 2 daughters. Margaret invited Tessa and her family to join the Biancatellos on a trip to see Rodin. Milo invited Salvatore along, as he would had nothing to do with just a bunch of little kids. As it was, Tessa's kids were significantly younger than Milo. Before heading off to see Rodin, Milo downloaded and watched the Simpsons episode Lost Alisa, which Milo saw 6 years ago. This is the episode where Lisa goes to an Egyptian museum and to see this exhibit, and gets lost after taking the wrong bus, and ends up in a Russian neighborhood. Meanwhile, Bart and Yoha goose around, and they get glue some things to their face and have to get them removed. Then Marlo listened to a song, Christ was born on Christmas Day, which he remembered from 2 summers ago. Naturally, this had been an enjoyable day, and gave him some flashbacks to 6 summers ago, before he was about to start the raid. That was the most, as we remember, that was the most optimistic Milo ever was about going back to school. This got Milo thinking about the school picnic at Seawood years ago when Salvatore came along. At the beginning of the day, Salvatore and Milo first went to Surftown. So far, this had been quite an enjoyable experience. They went on many slides. After Surftown, they lunched at a private picnic area and then hit the rides. The next day, Milo saw Katie playing the fiddle in the church with her dad's band. Katie had been back from her foreign exchange program and just returned recently. That evening, Milo and Ray went down to the Italian festival for a little bit. At the Italian festival, Milo saw Liliana from the summer camp and Rob. Rob was working the festival that year. A day later, the family met the Runcorns at Cedar Point as Kylo had worked there that summer. Kylo had bought them 3 tickets and invited the whole family up for the weekend. Margaret told Uncle Wayne about an incident in Mexico where the tour guide asked Ray if he spoke Italian, and he responded that he did. As it was, Ray thought the guide was asking if he was Italian, so the poor tour guide repeated the instructions in Italian. Uncle Wayne got quite a kick out of this one. That afternoon, Milo won a Homer doll. Otherwise, they went on some roller coasters and had some picnic lunches and then headed home. The battle against the trolls. No, against the sorcerers, sorry about that. The time had come for the kobolds and Londinians to start their battle against O'Neill's reign of terror. The seer Dornell appeared to the kobolds and instructed them to use no violence whatsoever. The Londinians had protested against O'Neill and accused him of offering them to the sorcerers. O'Neill told them that aid will always be given to them during battle and promised them success. The kobolds stood by O'Neill, knowing that he never misled them before. The Londinians went along, but apprehensively. O'Neill designed this plan of non-violent insubordination to the sorcerers and the Skinnerites. When it came to battle, those who resisted the Skinnerites were whacked with a rod until they submitted. Neither the Londinians in battle nor the kobolds gave in to the Skinnerites, as their sticks could not hurt them. After constant tries, the Skinnerites still failed to cause pain to anyone who was insubordinate. After much frustration, the Skinnerites surrendered their roles and fled Londinium. When they could not control the kobolds or the Londinian soldiers, O'Neill was infuriated by this defiance of the Londinian soldiers and kobolds, and distraught over the Skinnerite departure. At this, he searched out the kobolds and insubordinate Londinians and locked them in a cell he made with his own sorcery powers. While in the prison, the kobolds and Londinians were threatened by Arnihil and his sorcerers that they would greatly punish them. Arnihil constantly reminded the captives who he was and that there are consequences for disobeying the mighty. One kobold boldly told Arnihil that they don't bow down to tyrants. Arnihil did not take this well one bit. Another sorcerer told the kobolds that they make the rules and they are in no place to defy their superiors. The kobolds and insubordinate Londinians still resisted. Then the sorcerers warned the kobolds and insubordinate Londinians that if they keep defying them, they will cast 3 kobolds in the pit of fire to make an example out of them. They all still defied, and the sorcerer created a pit with his powers, and Arnihil started the fire. Arnihil was going to make an example and show all the Londinians what happens when they disobey their superiors. Then the morning came, where 3 terrified kobolds were carried off to the pit of fire, while the Londinians and remaining kobolds watched in grief and horror. These 3 kobolds, Peterstor, Iohannes, and Nerondin, shook in fear and became quite bitter with Dornell. They fell in, and they felt it was all over, and knew that they would die a horrible death. The 3 kobolds were cast into the pit with much fear and expecting unbearable pain. Upon arrival into the fire, the 3 kobolds were not affected one bit. Then they saw in the sky a Celtic 3-pointed knot, brighter than their fire. The kobolds called out loud enough to announce to the kobolds in cages and the Londinians that they were okay. After this word, the sorcerers heard and were in great fear. Arnihil went to check on the kobolds in hopes that they would have all burned up. As Arnihil feared, they were alive and quite well. Arnihil, along with the sorcerers, then went into a frenzy and ran into the dungeons to throw all the kobolds and insubordinate Londinians into the fire. The sorcerers, along with Arnihil, did not make it, as the rage caused them to blow up in flames like a grenade, and all that remained of them were ashes. Dornell arrived to rescue the three kobolds and release the other captives. Arondin asked Dornell if they knew this would happen. Dornell explained that these sorcerers cannot control their sorcery when they get angry and end up blowing themselves up. Ioannes asked why they were not harmed by the fire, which Dornell had no answer to. They understood what Dornell meant when he promised them victory. After the great victory over the sorcerers, There was a great celebration all over Londinium and Spartustica. There were 3 days of feasting, and fireworks lit the skies. The throne room of Londinium, where Arnil once sat in judgment, had been disposed of and replaced with a consecrated throne, with paintings of the angelic ministers. The celebrations were short-lived, as the kobolds had been summoned to training. The kobolds, as they knew well, was reminded that the next mission was in Atlantica. The kobolds became a bit apprehensive, as they feared coming into contact with the family they offended. Not to mention, they also feared that they would not get much time in Lionellum. End of the summer. On Milo's birthday, he got the 4th season of The Simpsons from his parents, the 5th season from Grandma Pearl, and the 6th season from Aunt Jane and Uncle Leo. The last 2 weekends before school started, the 2 Biancatello families and the Filentinos went back to Drake's Forest State Park. The O'Malleys were supposed to go, but Matt declined, due to some sports camp he signed up for. It was probably better that way, that Matt didn't go, as he was still in this overly cautious and quite slothful phase, and would not have wanted to go camping. Ray was a bit disappointed in them for cancelling last minute, and knew that Samantha would be disappointed. Milo felt quite pleased to hear Ray finally disagree with their ways of doing things. Food-wise, the trip had been a bit of a disappointment. What happened was they were supposed to go out to dinner one night, but had too much food left over from the hot dogs and macaroni salad that they ended up eating that instead. Then what happened was, on the way back, they were going to go to Frank's hot dog stand, but they took a wrong turn and ended up having to go to this mediocre little restaurant that sold bagged fries and that kind of thing. The weekend before starting school, Milo saw the Jafaris in church. This year, Minlu would be in her senior year, and Milo would be in his junior year. That night, the Biancatellos took Salvatore to Frank's hot dog stand, as they missed out on it on the way back from Drake's Forest. Milo was quite apprehensive about going back to school, as he did not want to be away from Amira at the senior high school, and was under the impression that the senior building was a more hostile environment. 2 days before school started, Milo had a confirmation meeting at St. Timothy's. Otherwise, Milo was in no good mood, and was constantly quite anxious about starting the new school year, and mostly spent time outside.